I woke up at 2:47 a.m. to a text that ended my marriage in 7 words. Just married my coworker. You're pathetic BTW. At first, I thought it was a prank. Some weird autocorrect disaster. I sat there, half asleep, blinking at the glowing screen like my brain couldn't catch up to my eyes. What kind of person does that? Ends a marriage through a text? And not just any text. A brag followed by an insult? My heart was racing, but the rest of me felt frozen, still. Blank. Is this how people find out their lives are over now? Through a phone notification? The bedroom was dark except for the soft glow of my screen. Her side of the bed was untouched. She'd flown to Vegas 3 days ago with her work friends. Said it was a networking retreat. Told me not to worry. I should have known better. There were signs, I guess. Too many late meetings. Too much perfume. A smile that didn't quite reach her eyes anymore. But I'd ignored them, because trusting her felt easier than facing the truth. And now? Now the truth was screaming at me in the middle of the night with a lowercase BTW like it was a joke. I didn't reply right away. What would I even say? Congrats on wrecking our vows. Tell your new husband I still have the Netflix password. Instead, I just sat there, staring at our wedding photo on the nightstand. The one where she's laughing in the sun, head tilted back like she doesn't have a care in the world. Back then, I thought that laugh meant joy. Now, I wondered if it was arrogance. Had it all been fake? Had she been playing me this whole time? I finally typed 2 words. Cool. That was it. Because if she could treat our marriage like a punchline, then I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of falling apart. But don't mistake that for weakness. Behind that word, I was already plotting. You see, I'm not the kind of guy who gets revenge through screaming or drama. I don't throw things or post online rants. I plan, and I wait. Have you ever watched someone set their own life on fire, and all you had to do was stand back and let it burn? That was me. By 3:15 a.m., I had locked her out of our shared bank account. At 3:17, I changed every password, streaming services, phone plans, airline miles, even the Amazon account. Anything with both our names on it? Gone. At 3:23, I transferred all my personal savings into a separate account she didn't know existed. I wasn't being cruel. I was being smart. She left me in the most humiliating way possible. She didn't just cheat. She celebrated it. In Vegas. With some guy I worked with. This wasn't heartbreak. This was war. By 4 a.m., I had a plan. First, I'd talk to a lawyer. Quietly. No drama. No warnings. Second, I'd freeze all shared assets and make sure anything in my name stayed that way. Third, I'd go to work. Because guess who's in HR at our company? Me. Guess who signs off on travel reimbursements? Also me. And guess what? Neither of them submitted their Vegas trip yet, which meant technically they'd gone off the grid without approval. That's a violation, and you better believe I wasn't going to let it slide. I finally lay back down at 5 a.m., staring at the ceiling as the early sun turned the room a soft gray. It was strange. I should have been angry. I should have been crushed. But I felt awake. Alive. Have you ever had someone rip the rug out from under you, only to realize you hated that rug anyway? That's what this felt like. Like she had just given me permission to become someone I hadn't dared to be before. Someone stronger, colder, smarter. At 7:03 a.m., I got a follow-up text from her. Don't be childish. You knew this was coming. No, I didn't. But thanks for confirming who you really are. I didn't respond. Instead, I got up, made coffee, showered, and put on my best suit. Because today wasn't the day I broke down. Today was the day I started taking everything back. By the time I pulled into the office parking lot, the city was still shaking off sleep. The early sun reflected off windshields, casting golden light across rows of empty cars. I sat there for a moment, gripping the wheel, letting the quiet hum of the engine ground me. I wasn't going in as the man whose wife had cheated. I was going in as the man who'd just been handed a weapon, and she didn't even know it. I walked through the lobby, past the receptionist, and into the elevator. No one suspected anything. No one could see the war brewing behind my calm face. I gave the usual nods, the same tight-lipped smiles. But inside, I was sharp, focused. I went straight to my office, locked the door, and opened my computer. I had work to do. Very specific work. First, I pulled up the company's travel records. It didn't take long to find them. Natalie, Bryce. Both had booked flights to Vegas on the company card. Both had marked the trip for business development. No itinerary, no meeting confirmations, no receipts. I scrolled through the approval trail. Neither of them had submitted a formal travel request, which, in our company, is not just careless. It's against policy, especially for managers. I checked the dates. 3 full days in Vegas. And from what I'd gathered, those 3 days had nothing to do with business, and everything to do with betrayal. I opened a document titled HR Disciplinary Protocol and began drafting a formal report. Nothing personal, nothing emotional, just policy violations, bullet-pointed with timestamps and screenshots, improper use of company funds, failure to file required documentation, unauthorized travel, potential breach of workplace conduct policy. I wasn't getting revenge. I was following rules, and that made it airtight. Around 9 a.m., Bryce strolled into the office like nothing had happened. He was wearing sunglasses inside, carrying a Starbucks, and had that smug bounce in his step I'd learned to hate over the years. I watched from behind my blinds as he laughed with someone in marketing, completely unaware that the world he thought he owned was about to collapse. Natalie wasn't back yet. She had taken a few more days to unwind. That was fine. More rope. By lunchtime, I'd finished my report and sent it to our director of compliance. I didn't copy Bryce or Natalie. I didn't leave hints. I didn't gloat. I just let the wheels start turning. Because once the process began, it couldn't be stopped. And the beauty of it, no one would know I had anything to do with it. I went back to my regular tasks for the rest of the day, answered emails, scheduled interviews, laughed at a coworker's bad joke, pretended everything was fine. But under my calm exterior, I was watching the fuse burn, and I didn't even have to light it. They did that themselves. That evening, as I sat on my couch with leftover Chinese food, my phone buzzed again. Another text from Natalie. "So you're just not going to respond? Grow up." I stared at the screen. Grow up? This coming from the woman who ran off to Vegas with my coworker, got married, and followed it up with a mocking text? She wanted a reaction. But I wasn't giving her one. Instead, I replied with just one sentence. "You'll hear from HR soon." I could imagine her face reading that. Confused. Maybe nervous. Probably defensive. Let her wonder. Let her sweat. The next morning I got an email from our director of compliance. "Thanks for flagging this. Meeting scheduled." Attached was a calendar invite. A private session with Natalie and Bryce set for Friday. I accepted, not as a participant, just as a witness. Thursday afternoon, Natalie returned to work. She walked into the office like nothing had happened, like she hadn't detonated our marriage from 400 miles away and tried to pretend it was business as usual. She even stopped by my office, knocked lightly on the door, her voice honey-sweet. "Hey, can we talk?" I didn't look up from my screen. "We'll talk in the meeting." Her smile faltered. "What meeting?" I glanced up. "You'll see." And I went back to typing. That night I packed a box, not with bitterness, with preparation. All our shared documents, bills, assets, everything we co-owned, I organized and copied. Because if she wanted to start over, she was going to have to do it without dragging me along for the ride. I wasn't her safety net anymore. Friday morning arrived like a slow-moving storm. Natalie and Bryce sat in the conference room, side by side, brows furrowed as the director laid out the violations. I watched through the glass wall as the list grew. Unauthorized expenses, no formal approval, violation of company travel protocols. Then came the final piece. "Also," the director said, looking directly at them, Your relationship, romantic or otherwise, complicates things. As per our company's policy on inter-employee relationships, disclosure is mandatory. Was that done? Natalie blinked. Bryce shook his head. No, he said. The director nodded, scribbled something on her notepad. You'll both be placed on leave while we conduct an internal investigation. Just like that. Not fired. Not punished yet. But flagged. Exposed. And that was all I needed. Natalie stormed into my office afterward, face flushed, voice low and sharp. You did this. I leaned back in my chair. No, you did. You're pathetic. I smiled. By the way, how's Vegas married life? She opened her mouth, then closed it, walked out without another word. And for the first time in a long time, I felt peace. Not because I'd hurt her, but because I hadn't let her destroy me. I'd survived. And now, it was my turn to rebuild, on my own terms. The house was too quiet when I got home that evening. No heels clicking across the hardwood. No perfume lingering in the hallway. No sounds of her voice echoing through the kitchen on a phone call I wasn't meant to overhear. The silence wasn't just absence, it was liberation. For the first time in months, I wasn't bracing for something. I wasn't preparing for a lie. I was alone, yes. But I wasn't lonely. Not anymore. My phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Natalie. It was Bryce. A text. What the hell is wrong with you? I stared at it, letting the anger bleed through the screen. I could almost picture his face. Red, sweaty, used to being liked, not used to being held accountable. That was the kind of guy he was. The kind who always laughed a little too loud at his own jokes. The kind who thought rules didn't apply to him because he wore a good suit and said the right things in meetings. I didn't reply. What could I say that Karma hadn't already whispered in his ear during that HR meeting? I left the message on read. Sometimes silence is louder than any comeback. Saturday morning, I took the day to clean. Not because the house was dirty, but because I needed to strip away everything that still felt like her. I pulled down the framed photos, smiling faces at the beach, champagne toasts on New Year's, a blurry selfie from our first trip to Boston. I dropped them all in a cardboard box labeled storage. I opened the closet and stared at the neat line of her clothes still hanging there. Dresses, blazers, her favorite oversized hoodie that she used to steal from me but eventually just claimed as hers. I took it all down, folded it, boxed it. Every drawer I opened felt like peeling back a layer of denial. I hadn't been living with a partner. I'd been hosting a liar. I took the boxes to the garage, stacking them in the far corner, out of sight, out of reach. Then I grabbed the locket, the one I gave her on our 3rd anniversary. Inside was a photo of the two of us, and a tiny quote engraved beneath it. You and me, always. It was the kind of sentimental thing she used to melt over. Used to. Now it felt like a punchline. I left it sitting on the counter. She could pick it up if she ever came back for her things. Not that I expected her to. If she had the nerve to marry someone else in Vegas, she could find the nerve to send someone else to collect her junk. Let her new husband help carry it out. Later that afternoon, I got a call from Natalie's sister, Amanda. I hadn't spoken to her in months. She'd always been polite to me, but distant, never involved. But now, her voice crackled through the line, tight with frustration. She's a mess, she said. She should be. I mean, you didn't even give her a chance to explain. She married someone else, Amanda. Silence. I know. It's just... Things got out of hand. Vegas was supposed to be a joke. A wild weekend. The ceremony wasn't even legal at first. They were drinking. I don't care. My voice came out colder than I expected, but I meant it. She made her choice, and I made mine. You really won't talk to her? No. She thinks you'll come around. That made me laugh. Quietly, bitterly. She thought wrong. That night I sat in the backyard with a drink in hand, staring up at the sky. The stars were faint. City lights always dimmed them, but I still found comfort in looking up. Somewhere out there, things made sense. Stars burned, planets spun, and gravity never lied. People? Not so much. Have you ever felt like the person you loved was just a well-dressed stranger? Like all the memories were scripted by someone else? That was me now, trying to untangle reality from the illusion. I checked my email, half expecting something new from HR. Instead, there was an email from Bryce's ex-girlfriend, Samantha. We'd only met once at a company picnic. She seemed sweet, quiet, way too good for him, I remember thinking. Her message was short. I heard what happened. I just wanted to say, good for you. You're not the first person Bryce has destroyed, but you might be the first to hit back. Respect. I sat there for a while, staring at the screen. Then I typed back, thank you. I hope you're doing better now. She responded almost immediately. I am, and now, maybe he'll finally get what he deserves. The following Monday, the fallout truly began. Bryce was suspended indefinitely. Natalie was placed under review pending further investigation. But the rumors had already started. Whispers in the break room, side glances in the hallway. No one said it outright, but they all knew. This wasn't just a personal mess. It was professional, public, and humiliating. And I kept showing up, early, prepared, calm, because power doesn't always come from shouting. Sometimes it comes from not flinching when the house collapses around everyone else. Midweek, Natalie finally showed up at the house. She didn't text, didn't call, just knocked. I opened the door to see her standing there, sunglasses on, arms crossed over her chest like armor. I'm here for my stuff, she said. I stepped aside. No words exchanged. She moved through the house quickly, grabbing clothes, bags, a few framed pictures. She paused at the locket on the counter. You left this out. I figured you might want it, I said. She picked it up, opened it, and then quietly closed it again. I didn't mean for it to happen like that, she said, voice softer now. I shrugged. But it did. She nodded. I was angry. I thought you didn't care anymore. I said nothing, because anything I said would have been used to twist the narrative later. So I let the silence speak. She left without another word. No apology, no breakdown, just a final glance over her shoulder. I watched her walk away, and I didn't feel sorrow. I didn't feel anger. I felt relief. Like the final piece of a puzzle had snapped into place, and the picture I was looking at made sense again. This wasn't revenge. This was release. And the difference? Revenge is about them. Release is about you. I wasn't punishing her. I was reclaiming me. And that was just the beginning. 3 days after Natalie left with the last of her things, I opened the front closet and found her wedding shoes still sitting on the top shelf. White satin, never worn. I stared at them for a while, wondering if she'd left them there on purpose. A parting shot, a forgotten detail, or maybe she thought she'd return for them someday, like this was just a pause, not an ending. Either way, I took them down and set them on the porch. 30 minutes later, they were gone. Whether she picked them up herself or a stranger passing by thought they'd found treasure, I didn't care. Because every day, a little more of her disappeared from my world, and I liked it that way. At work, things were changing quickly. Bryce's suspension had turned into an official termination. The internal investigation uncovered more than just his Vegas stunt, misuse of funds, undisclosed conflicts of interest, and a long trail of shady decisions. His charm couldn't save him this time. Natalie, she resigned. No formal goodbye, no statement. Just an email to the company with 2 sentences. Effective immediately, I'm stepping down from my role. Thank you for the opportunity. It was over. Just like that. And still, no apology, no ownership, no regret. It was like she thought disappearing quietly would clean the slate. But silence doesn't erase damage. It just avoids the echo. The day after her resignation, I got a call from her mother. I hadn't spoken to her since our wedding. She'd never liked me much, too quiet, too middle class, not ambitious enough for her daughter. But now her voice was trembling. I just heard, she said. Is it true? What part? The Vegas thing. The coworker. The marriage. I didn't answer. She took my silence as confirmation. Then she sighed. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, I replied. There was a long pause. Then softer. I always thought you were too soft. Turns out you were the strong one. That surprised me. Not the insult. Too soft had been her favorite dig since day one. But the follow-up. I didn't know what to say. So I said the only thing that came naturally. Take care. And I hung up. The strange thing about betrayal is that people always assume you want revenge. They expect fire. They expect screaming, social media posts, dramatic scenes in public. But me, I just wanted my life back. The version of it where I slept through the night, where I didn't second-guess kindness, where I trusted my own instincts again. That kind of healing doesn't come in explosions. It comes in quiet moments, like walking into your kitchen and realizing there's no argument waiting, or sitting on your couch and knowing the silence isn't hiding anything, it's just peace. Clara noticed the difference. We'd stayed in touch, more often now. She wasn't just the person who reached out after reading my essays. She was becoming a steady voice in my world. A good morning message here. A podcast recommendation there. And I saw this and thought of you text just when I needed it. She never pushed. She just showed up. One night, she asked if I wanted to grab dinner. Nothing fancy. Just a quiet place with good food and better conversation. I said yes. Not because I was looking for anything, but because it felt natural. And natural was rare these days. We met at a small Italian restaurant tucked into a quiet block. Candlelit tables, soft music, a place that felt safe to say things out loud. Halfway through the meal, she looked at me and said, "You seem lighter." I smiled. I feel like I finally exhaled. "Did you ever think you'd be here?" she asked. "After all of that?" I thought about it. No. I thought it would destroy me. And now I know it just revealed me. She nodded. That's what pain does. It burns the lies away. I looked at her, really looked. And for the first time in a long time, I felt seen. Not pitied, not analyzed, just seen. Later that night, we sat in my car outside her apartment. Neither of us moved to leave. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Anything." "Do you think you ever really loved her? Natalie, I mean?" I was quiet for a long time. I think I loved the version of her I thought was real. The one she showed me. The one she used to keep me close. And now? Now I know love doesn't make you feel small. It doesn't laugh at your pain. It doesn't walk away while blaming you. Clara reached over and squeezed my hand. And that was enough. We didn't kiss. We didn't promise anything. We just sat there, two people who had been broken, and were now building something honest. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight spilling across my bed. No noise, no texts, no chaos. I made coffee, opened my laptop, and started writing. A new essay. This one titled, "She Left in Vegas and I Found Myself at Home." I wrote about betrayal, about quiet revenge, about the power of not playing their game. But mostly, I wrote about what comes after, not the storm, the calm. The choice to stay kind, to stay soft, to not let their lies become your identity. That afternoon, I got an email from a publisher. They wanted to compile my essays into a book, something about healing in the aftermath, emotional resilience, how to survive the unthinkable and still believe in good people. I smiled, because I wasn't writing for her anymore. I was writing for the version of me who once thought he wasn't enough. And for everyone else who has been told they too sensitive when they were just paying attention. Later that week, I received a text from an unknown number. "I hope you're happy." No name, no signature, just bitterness in digital form. I didn't reply. I just blocked the number and moved on with my day. Because when someone says that, they're not really hoping you're happy. They're hoping you're not. And the best answer to that is to be. Quietly. Proudly. Unapologetically. The weeks that followed moved slower than I expected. I thought life would speed up once Natalie was gone, like a slingshot finally let go. But it didn't. Instead, it unfolded gently, like a quiet song I hadn't heard in years. No arguments, no accusations, no second-guessing myself. Just space. And after so much chaos, space felt like luxury. I started cooking again. Nothing fancy. Just real meals. Pasta with garlic and olive oil, stir-fry with fresh vegetables, chicken soup that reminded me of my childhood. It had been so long since I cooked for myself, not because someone was watching or judging or texting mid-bite, but simply because I was hungry and wanted something warm. You ever realize how many things you stopped doing because the person you were with never valued them? That was me. I'd forgotten the joy in little rituals. And now, with each day, I was reclaiming them. One evening while I was prepping dinner, a package arrived. No return address, just my name in neat handwriting. I opened it cautiously. Inside was a hardcover notebook, black leather, with a silver pen tucked into the spine. A note was taped to the first page. For your next chapter, write the life you deserve. See Clara. I ran my hand over the smooth cover. It had been years since I kept a real journal. And just like that, I knew I'd start again. Not because I was broken, but because I was healing. And healing deserves documentation. A few nights later, Clara and I went on another walk. The sky was turning gold behind the skyline, the kind of light that made everything look softer. We didn't talk much, just walked, shoulder to shoulder, silence sitting comfortably between us. Eventually she said, "You're different." I raised an eyebrow. "In a good way?" "In a whole way," she said. We reached a bench near the river and sat down. I was scared at first, I admitted, that I'd never trust again. She nodded. Me too. But now I'm more afraid of going back to who I used to be. The version of me who made himself small to keep someone else happy. "You're not that person anymore," she said, "and you never have to be again." And just like that, something unknotted in my chest. The next day I found out that Bryce had filed for divorce. Quick and messy. Apparently, Vegas marriages are just as fragile as Vegas promises. A mutual coworker passed me in the hallway and said, "Guess the honeymoon phase didn't last." I didn't ask for details. I didn't need them. All I said was, "Guess not." And I meant it, because karma doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, "Watch this," and lets the rest unfold. A few days later, I ran into Natalie's sister at the grocery store. She looked embarrassed, caught. I almost kept walking, but she stopped me. I wanted to say, "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't know what really happened. Natalie told us you were controlling, that you left her out of nowhere." I nodded. She always was a good storyteller. "She's not doing great," her sister added. I shrugged. "Actions have consequences." "She said you froze everything, took her off the accounts, changed the locks. She texted me she married someone else from Vegas at 2:47 a.m. Her sister went pale. She didn't mention that part. Of course not. There was a pause. Then she said, "I'm glad you're okay." I nodded again, softer this time. "I am." And it was true. Not just something I said to avoid emotion. I really was okay. Back home, I opened the journal Clara gave me and started writing. The first page was messy, ink smudged, words jumbled. But it was honest. I wrote about the night of the text, the silence in our home after she left, the satisfaction of standing my ground, the fear of starting over. And then I wrote this line. Maybe closure isn't a door slamming shut. Maybe it's the slow creak of one opening somewhere else. Later that week, I was invited to speak at a local writing event. The theme was, "Beginnings that didn't start the way you expected." Fitting. I shared a condensed version of what happened. Not the drama, not the details, but the truth about how I learned to choose myself, how I stopped mistaking survival for love, and how sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is leave quietly and rebuild loudly. After I finished, a woman in the back row raised her hand. "Do you forgive her?" she asked. The room stilled. I thought about it, then said, "I don't know if forgiveness is the right word. I don't wish her harm. I don't carry hate. But I'm not waiting for an apology either. I've just let go." She smiled. "That sounds like peace." I smiled back. It is. That night, I walked home under a sky full of stars and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. Not for what I endured, but for what I walked away from, and for who I was becoming now that the noise was gone. Sometimes healing isn't about feeling good right away. It's about making space. For silence. For stillness. For the new version of yourself to walk in, take off their shoes, and say, "I'm home." And finally, I was. It's strange how quickly peace can start to feel like normal. I didn't notice it all at once. It wasn't like someone flipped a switch and suddenly everything was okay. It was more like waking up one morning and realizing your first thought wasn't about her, or making dinner and not checking your phone for a message that would never come. Somewhere in the quiet, I had found something stronger than closure. I had found freedom. Work had settled into its usual rhythm. The whispers had died down. New hires came in, and the drama of Natalie and Bryce became office folklore, a cautionary tale told in lowered voices over lunch. I let it fade. Not because I was ashamed, because I didn't need the spotlight to validate my healing. I had what I needed, a clear conscience, my name untarnished, and my dignity intact. And when you've survived betrayal with your peace still intact, what else is there to prove? One Thursday afternoon, Clara stopped by my place with 2 coffees and a box of pastries from a little shop I'd mentioned in passing. "You remembered," I said, surprised as I took the box. "You said their almond croissants taste like your childhood," she replied with a grin. That seemed important. We sat on the balcony, feet propped on the railing, sun painting our faces gold. Below us, the city hummed with quiet energy. "Do you miss her?" Clara asked after a while. I didn't answer immediately. Did I? I thought about the version of Natalie I once loved, the one who danced barefoot in our kitchen, who sang off-key during road trips, who made me believe in forever. But then I thought about the woman who sent a midnight text from Vegas, erasing years in a single line. "No," I said finally. "I think I miss who I thought she was." Clara nodded. "That's the hardest part, isn't it? Mourning a version of someone that never really existed." And just like that, I felt something else let go. Not with force, just a gentle release, like I didn't need to carry it anymore. That weekend, I got an unexpected invitation. It was from an old college friend, Adam, who was getting married in a few months. We hadn't spoken much over the years, but we'd stayed connected through occasional texts and birthdays. His message was simple. Getting married in October would mean a lot if you came. I hesitated. Not because I wasn't happy for him, but because weddings now lived in a part of my brain that felt sharp and a little too close to the bone. Still, I replied, "I'll be there." Not just to support him, but to show myself I could stand in a place that once shattered me and not break again. The night of the wedding came quicker than I expected. It was an outdoor ceremony, wrapped in twinkle lights and late summer warmth. Laughter drifted through the air, soft music playing in the background. And somehow, I felt okay. I watched Adam say his vows, hands shaking just enough to show how much it meant. His bride beamed at him like he'd hung the stars himself. There were no jokes at anyone's expense, no mockery, just love, spoken clearly. When it ended, people cheered, and I found myself clapping too. Genuinely. It didn't hurt. It actually felt good. Proof that love could still be beautiful, even if mine had been a lie. After the reception, Clara and I sat on the grass under a tree, watching couples dance. "You didn't flinch once," she said softly. "I did," I said, smiling, "but only a little." She reached over, brushing her hand against mine. "I'm proud of you." I looked at her, really looked, and something in her eyes told me I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. The next day, I cleaned out the last drawer in my apartment that still held Natalie's things. It wasn't much, just a few receipts, a greeting card from a vacation years ago, and an old phone charger she swore she needed but never took. I tossed it all, not with bitterness, with clarity, because moving on isn't about pretending it didn't happen. It's about choosing not to build your future around it. A few nights later, I got another text from a number I didn't recognize. "Just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. I know I don't deserve it, but I hope you're okay. Natalie." The message wasn't angry, it wasn't sarcastic. It was probably as close to genuine as she could manage, and I could have responded. I could have said I forgave her, or that I didn't. I could have asked why she did it, demanded answers, closure. But instead, I read it twice, then deleted it. Because I didn't need her apology to move forward. I had already forgiven her in the only way that mattered, by letting go. That night, I opened the journal Clara had given me, and I wrote, "Healing isn't loud. It's not a grand declaration or a perfect ending. It's sitting in silence and realizing you don't need them anymore. You've outgrown the version of yourself who begged for crumbs, and now you feast on peace." Clara read the entry a few days later when I showed it to her. She didn't say anything at first. Then she reached across the table, took my hand, and said, "That's the most beautiful thing I've ever read." I looked down at our hands, and I realized I didn't just survive a betrayal. I had walked through fire and come out softer, not harder, more aware, not more afraid, more myself than I'd ever been. And best of all, I wasn't alone anymore. Not because I needed someone to fix me, but because I had become someone who no longer needed fixing. It was never about getting her back. It was always about getting me back. And I had. The fall air rolled in crisp and clean, brushing against my face like a whisper from a new season. The kind that doesn't just hint at change, it carries it. Leaves started to dry and curl, breaking away from branches that no longer needed them. And in a strange way, I understood that feeling perfectly, because for the first time in over a year, I felt untethered, not drifting, not lost, just free. And with that freedom came a question I hadn't dared to ask myself since the night it all fell apart. What do I want now? Not what should I rebuild? Not who should I become to make others comfortable? But what do I want? I found myself asking that question often over the next few weeks, sometimes during long walks, sometimes while staring at my ceiling in the dark, sometimes in the middle of a grocery store aisle, trying to decide between two brands of coffee and realizing I didn't actually know my favorite anymore. When you spend so long compromising, you forget your own preferences. You forget how to choose for yourself. So I started small. Dark roast, no sugar, socks that didn't match, a haircut I'd always thought about trying but never did because Natalie called it too messy. A playlist of music I loved but she had once said gave her headaches. Bit by bit, I began reclaiming the things she had silenced in me. And with each choice, I felt more alive. Clara noticed. She always did. "You're different lately," she said one evening as we sipped wine on her couch, watching the rain drip down the window. "In a good way?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "In a real way," she said. "Like you're finally showing up as you." I smiled. "I think I'm just remembering who that is." She leaned her head against my shoulder. "I like him." And I knew then, I wasn't healing for her. But having someone who saw me, really saw me, was a gift I didn't take for granted. One afternoon, while cleaning out an old drawer, I came across a photo album. It wasn't from my marriage, it was older. College, early work years, friends, road trips, bad fashion choices, and toothy smiles. And buried near the back was a photo of me on a beach, standing next to a giant sandcastle I'd built for no reason at all. I was laughing. Not just smiling. Laughing. That photo stopped me cold. Because I remembered that day. I remembered how carefree I felt. How unafraid I was to look ridiculous. How unbothered I was about being liked. I missed him, not the boy in the picture, but the man he was supposed to become, before I shrank him for the comfort of someone who didn't deserve him. I set the photo on my desk, a reminder of the person I promised to return to. Work kept me busy. After Bryce and Natalie left, I'd taken on more responsibility, not out of obligation, but out of desire. I wanted to lead, to build something new, something clean. We hired new people, I trained them, mentored them, and one day during a quiet lunch with our CEO, he leaned in and said, "We've been watching you, the way you handled everything, your leadership, your ethics, your composure. We want you to step into a senior role." I blinked. Me? He smiled. "It's always been you." And just like that, the boy who once stayed quiet to keep the peace was being recognized, not for who he pretended to be, but for who he really was. I walked home that night in the cold, fingers buried in my coat pockets, the city lights blinking like quiet applause. I didn't need a trophy. This was enough. The knowing, the becoming, the return. A few nights later, Clara and I made dinner together. Nothing fancy. Pasta, garlic bread, red wine. And when we sat down to eat, she handed me a small envelope. "What's this?" I asked. "Just open it." Inside was a simple card, and written in her looping handwriting was one line. "Thank you for not letting what broke you define you." I looked up, blinking faster than I'd like to admit. She reached across the table and took my hand. "You're the strongest person I know," she said. "Not because you fought back, but because you stayed kind." We didn't talk about love. We didn't need to. It was in the way she looked at me when I didn't know she was looking, in the way she remembered the little things, in the way she never asked me to be anything but exactly who I was. And slowly, gently, without fear, I felt my heart make room, not for a replacement, but for a new beginning. One morning, I stood in the mirror adjusting my shirt collar and noticed something different in my reflection. It wasn't the clothes, or the haircut. It was the eyes. They were steady now. No more darting around, looking for signs. No more scanning for betrayal. No more shadows. Just calm. And I realized I hadn't thought about Natalie in days. Not her laugh, not her cruelty, not her betrayal. She wasn't gone because I forced her out. She was gone because she had no place in this version of me. Later that week, I walked past the beach from that old photo. The sandcastle was long gone, of course, but the waves still came in, just like they always had, steady, unapologetic. I stood there for a while, watching the water. Then I pulled out my phone and snapped a picture. Not of the ocean, but of me. Smiling, whole, still here. And for the first time in forever, it wasn't about proving anything. It was just a moment, a truth, a reminder. I survived. And even better, I had arrived. The first real cold snap came in mid-November, the kind of morning where you wake up to frost painting the windows, and your breath makes clouds in the kitchen air while you wait for the coffee to brew. I stood by the window sipping from my favorite mug, watching the street below slowly come alive. People bundled in coats, cars idling with exhaust curling into the sky. It was peaceful. And it struck me just how far I'd come. This time last year, I was making plans for a future with someone who was already halfway out the door. I was sleeping next to betrayal and calling it love. I was giving my all to a person who thought loyalty was weakness and vulnerability was something to mock. Now, I woke up alone, but not lonely. I woke up whole. And more than that, I woke up proud. I got an email that morning from the HR director who had handled the fallout at work months ago. Her message was brief, professional. Final closure regarding the Bryce and Natalie investigation. Record sealed, officially concluded. There it was. Closure. Not from them. Not from some apology I never got, but from the system itself. The company moved on. Their mess was archived. Their names, just signatures on exit paperwork. And mine? Mine was still on the door. Still on the payroll. Still here. Isn't it wild how people can try to wreck your life and end up only removing themselves from it? Clara and I spent Thanksgiving together, just the two of us, in her tiny apartment, with a rotisserie chicken instead of turkey, and boxed mashed potatoes that somehow tasted better than any five-star meal I'd had before. We didn't dress up. We didn't do anything for show. We lit a candle, put on an old jazz playlist, and played card games in sweatpants. Halfway through dinner, she looked up from her plate and said, "You know what I'm thankful for?" I raised an eyebrow. "That I brought pie?" She laughed. "That too, but mostly, that you chose yourself. Back then." I nodded, suddenly quiet. Me too. Because everything good that followed started from that one terrifying, powerful decision. To walk away. In early December, I received a letter in the mail. Not email. A letter. It was from Natalie. I stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. Inside was a folded piece of paper, her handwriting small and careful. "I've been thinking about what happened," it began. "About how it ended. About how I ended it. And I know there's no fixing what I broke." She went on to describe what her life had become since Vegas. How the marriage lasted less than 3 months. How it turned toxic fast. How she lost friends, burned bridges, and realized too late that the high she was chasing was never real to begin with. "You didn't deserve that text, or any of it," she wrote. "I hurt you. I humiliated you. And I want you to know, I finally understand what I destroyed." I kept reading, expecting manipulation. A plea. A door cracked open. But it never came. Instead, it ended like this. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to take responsibility. For once. I hope you're happy. Natalie." I folded the letter slowly, set it on the table, and stared at it for a long time. And then, I let out a breath I didn't know I was still holding. Not because I forgave her, but because I didn't need her apology anymore. She was finally carrying her own weight, and I was already on the other side. That weekend, I burned the letter in the fireplace, not out of spite, out of ceremony, a final release. The flames curled around the page like fingers letting go, and when it turned to ash, I felt something inside me settle. A chapter closed, not slammed, not torn, just turned. On New Year's Eve, I stood on a rooftop with Clara, the city lights blinking below us and fireworks beginning to crackle in the distance. She held a mug of hot cider, cheeks rosy from the cold. Her eyes met mine as we counted down with the crowd below. 5, 4, 3, 2. And then, without planning, without pressure, I leaned in and kissed her. Soft, certain, sure. The kind of kiss you don't second guess. The kind that feels earned. Not rushed. Not desperate. Just right. When we pulled away, she smiled. "Happy New Year," she whispered. And I realized, deep in my bones, it really was. In the months that followed, life didn't become perfect. I still had bad days. Still had moments where trust felt like a tightrope. Still had dreams where I woke up in that old apartment, heart pounding, thinking I was back in that betrayal. But those moments passed. Because I was no longer haunted. I was human. And healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about no longer living in it. One day I walked past a bridal shop on my lunch break. A couple stood in front of the window, pointing and smiling. A woman held a swatch of lace against her chest, dreaming about a day she hoped would be everything. I smiled, not bitter, not jealous, just grateful, because I had known what it meant to love blindly, and now I knew what it meant to love wisely. I still wear the watch Clara gave me for my birthday. On the back, she had it engraved. To the man who walked away and found everything. I read it sometimes when I need a reminder of the pain, of the growth, of the way a text message at 2:47 a.m. led to the best thing that ever happened to me. Me. So if you're reading this, and you're standing on the edge of heartbreak, or betrayal, or a choice you're too scared to make, let this be your sign. You can leave. You can start over. You can rise from the ashes of what they thought would bury you. And not only survive, but shine. Because no matter how they ended it, you get to decide how it begins again.